All right, hello everybody, and today we're going to be talking about the future of gaming, personified in the company of NVIDIA. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And they have just launched a brand new service called GeForce Now Cloud Gaming. I got it right. Yes. All right, that's a little more complex than you think to remember. Now, as you all know, Netflix really changed the way we watch movies. Now everybody streams, right? And now it's not just movies, now it's turned into video games with Xbox Game Pass. Well, if you're a PC gamer, you're left out of the bunch a little bit, because I know what you're thinking. You want to play the latest and greatest games, and you've got a little money to play around with, but you just don't have enough money to shell out for thousands and thousands of dollars for a half-decent laptop to play these games. NVIDIA has got you guys covered with this brand new service I just read about. Okay, so what they have done is in their corporate headquarters, they have built a massive amount of what they call super pod computers. And yes, guys, it does look like something out of Tron. You can go see videos of it. Actually looks almost like something out of the Terminator. The more I look, like some John Connor type stuff they got going on. But anyway, super pod computers that are loaded to the gills with processing and GPUs. Yeah, all that good stuff. Well, okay, I know what you're thinking. How is this significant? Well, what they have recently announced is a service, GeForce Now Cloud Gaming, with multiple tiers, and we'll talk about the tiers in just a second. But you pay a subscription fee, and you get not software, but you get hardware on the cloud on demand. And that's the best way I understand it. And if you want the ins and outs of how this works, you're going to have to go ask NVIDIA. I've read about it. I'm not entirely sure how they managed to do this, but let me walk you through how this works. You pick a tier. Let's just say the free tier, because they do have a free tier for you to try out. And you are limited to about a session of gaming, a 1 hour session of gaming. Let's say you've got an older, iMac, okay? You've got an older iMac that just can't handle, doesn't have any of the components necessary to play some of the new games. On the NVIDIA server, on their website, and once you log in and get yourself hooked up with a game, and you can hook up to your Steam or your Epic Games account, depending on what you got, and you will be able to play these games at 4K or 1080p, all that good stuff, and process them really fast without actually having the hardware physically. They've managed to put it on the cloud for you. Again, not really sure how it works, but basically it turns your web browser into a really powerful computer built for gaming. That's what NVIDIA has managed to do. I've never seen anything like it, and it's a dramatic reversal from what we've been seeing in the past, what with Netflix and Game Pass and everything. This is software as a service. NVIDIA is offering you hardware as a service. That's the big new thing. So let me walk you through how this works. Now, there are 3 tiers you guys can choose from. I just talked about the free tier. That doesn't give you anything real special. You don't get like super high def gaming or anything. You only get about an hour session. If you are willing to pay about $50, if you're willing to pay about $100 for 6 months, you can move up a tier. And now you can play 4K games. You now get a 6-hour session. Okay, ooh, that's pretty sweet. You get a 6-hour session of gaming. That's every day. You're limited to 6 hours of using their hardware because they got so many different users, apparently. This is how they've circumvented that. And you don't get too much beyond that. You just get 4K capability. You get massive processing speed. Yeah. At 4K, not at 120 frames per second, only at 60 frames per second. But by the way, guys, that's still going to look phenomenal on your monitor and all that good stuff. Now, if you move up a tier to their big bad 3080 tier, guys, you get it all. You're going to have to pay almost $200 for a 6-month subscription. You can get it every month. I don't know what it will cost you for an individual month, but almost $200 for a 6-month subscription, which will give you all the goodies. You get an 8-hour session, 4K at 120 frames per second in HDR with all the hardware stuff you need to run these games. Now, to really make you guys understand just how good that this service really is, I'm going to show you something interesting. Let's take the Xbox Series X. I actually saw a test, and you're just not going to believe this, where they pitted the Xbox Series X, which I've called and still hold the Godzilla of home console gaming, against NVIDIA's service just to see which one ran faster. Okay? Remember, Xbox Series X, Godzilla, 12 teraflops power, massive amount of power underneath that hood. This should be a blowout. And the game I saw used was Destiny 2, which is a great way to do it. Destiny 2 is a very high-res game, heavy data game. It's a really good game, actually, but there's a lot of just in-depth stuff going in. So that's a great benchmark game. We used Destiny 2, and we used the 2 paid tiers from NVIDIA to see how fast they ran it. You're not going to believe this. The Xbox Series X did phenomenally well. It did 4K at 60 frames per second. Now, I know what you're thinking, but the Xbox Series X go to 120 frames per second. Yes, it can. But I'll tell you why the 60 frames per second is significant. The reason is because on the low pay tier, it only goes up to 60 frames per second. So in order to keep everything even out, I just wanted to see it at 60 frames per second. So that's why I mentioned that. Destiny 2, Xbox Series X, 60 frames per second, 4K set on, and it ran it all at the refresh rate of about 90 milliseconds. That's nothing to sniff at, guys. That is respectable. They did really good. And guys, I would never have thought that anything would beat that. That's fast. You're not really going to notice that. Well, on the low pay tier, the $100 tier for 6 months on NVIDIA, online, Destiny 2, set to 4K at 60 frames per second. How fast did that refresh rate go? Refresh rate go. Guys, it did a refresh rate of about 81 milliseconds. That's right. The low paid tier, and by the way, $100 is still a lot of money, but the low tier blew out the Xbox Series X. Now, guys, it's not by a huge margin. It's not going to be night and day, but guys, that's pretty significant to be able to do that on your web browser. But guys, here's where you're not going to believe. If you buy the big, bad tier, the 3080 tier, guys, you're not going to believe this. Destiny 2, 4K, set to 120 frames per second with HDR on. It was able to run Destiny 2 at an astonishing 50 millisecond refresh rate. Guys, that is a significant jump up. It is significantly more powerful than the Series X, which is basically the most powerful home console that you can get currently. That is astonishing. And basically, guys, for a little under $500 a year, I got to tell you, that's a bargain to get to turn your web browser into that kind of a powerful gaming just powerhouse. That's astonishing. It really is. I would never have thought that. Now, I will have to say, you can't just take a really old computer and get the job done. Yes, it'll play 4K, but you do need to have a 4K compatible monitor. But other than that, if you guys don't have the hardware, you can basically use the hardware on your browser with NVIDIA service, and you can use it in such a way that you can turn your web browser to be even more powerful than the Series X. That's incredible. I know what you're thinking. Why doesn't everybody use this? A couple of reasons. Number one, it's brand new, just came out. I'm just hearing about it. Number two, you are limited to sessions. Now, I got to be honest with you guys, even on the low tier, limited to a 6-hour session, that's more than enough for anybody. I don't think I've ever sat down and played anything for 6 hours straight. I don't think I've ever done that. The longest time I can remember playing a game was when I played Journey straight through on the PlayStation, and that took me about 3.5 hours. And that's the longest I think I've ever sat. So yeah, guys, 6 hours more than enough for anybody. 8 hours if you get the big boy. Guys, who sits around and plays 8 hours every day? But let's just face it, we don't like being capped like that. The other reason that this is not as big is because, and guys, don't sell your Series X just yet. I'm not done yet. The other reason NVIDIA's service isn't as big yet is because you do have a limited catalog of games to work with. You have a good catalog. You can NVIDIA does not have like an in-house gaming hub you can work with. You have to hook it up to a different account to a compatible account. For example, if you have an Epic Games account where you can play Fortnite, Rocket League and stuff, yeah, it'll hook up to that. or if you have a Steam account. And Steam is ever evolving, ever changing, but it still has a lot of really good titles. You could hook it up to that. But that is still a limited game availability at this current time. Whereas if you buy an Xbox, you get way more games, especially if you get PlayStation, you get all their exclusive games. So I know what you're thinking. How do I make a decision like this? I just saw this service. I really like the idea of turning my laptop into a really powerful home console, but do I need it? No, you don't really need it. If you already have a home console, you guys are good. And I know what I just said about the refresh rate, but that's just for testing purposes, guys. That's on paper. And we're looking at milliseconds. Yes, that's faster. It really is. And it's impressive that NVIDIA did that. You're really not going to notice that unless you've got like a magnifying glass and you're like right on the monitor and looking at it. And you're going to be like the guy in The Incredibles where he goes, he moved right there. Right. Where he's like rewinding the tape over and over. He's like, moved right there. I saw a little blip and stuff. That's what you're going to end up like. You don't want to end up like that guy. The Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5, heck, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Those are still fantastic consoles. No reason to get rid of those. Where NVIDIA's service really comes in, if you don't have any of these consoles, you have an older computer, but you want to play some of the new games, but you don't have the money for the hardware, or the hardware is just harder to get, especially in this market. And that's where the GeForce Now cloud gaming service comes in. And it's a radically different way of doing things. So it's really, really neat. It's not going to be for everybody. This is definitely a more niche style service, but it's really neat. So again, you got an old laptop, can't get parts, or you just don't have the money for parts. This may be something you would want to look into. But again, guys, I've never heard of anything like it, and it's really neat. So I enjoyed reading about it, enjoyed talking about it, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.